So let's hop back in the time machine. Go back to 1980. Reagan beat Jimmy Carter in Michigan by 7 points. 4 years later, George W. Bush beat Michael Dukakis by 8 points in Michigan. And then from 1988 and on, Michigan was won by Democrats up until 2016. And it really wasn't until 2016 that Michigan was looked at as a swing state. And then you look at how close it was in 16, the amount of votes Donald Trump got in 2020, and all of a sudden Michigan is a very much part of this group of battleground states. What has caused that shift over the course of, some 40 years to a point where Michigan is now up for grabs once again? Dave Dulio is the professor of political science at Oakland University and joins me this afternoon. Professor, it's good to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So let's take a little bit of a historical perspective here. Michigan, for many years, a Democratic state in terms of who they preferred when it came to presidential elections. It wasn't until Donald Trump came around where things changed. And not only in 2016, but he got huge votes in 2020, and now going into 2024, it still feels very much, and a lot of polls show that it's a toss-up as well. What has changed in that span of time in Michigan?
So I'll answer that two ways. Number one, I'll say not much, actually. If we go back through history and look at those presidential election results where, as you correctly note, that the Democrats and the Democratic candidates had this string of victories from 92 through 2012. Yes, that is a pretty good string of success for Democrats. But underneath those election results that all went the Democrats' way is a competitive state. And it was during that time. We elected Republican governors, for instance. Through that time, the split between the total number of votes for state house candidates and state Senate candidates across Michigan was almost 50-50. So while Democrats won in that string of elections with great success, Michigan was always a pretty competitive state. I would say that in 2016, Donald Trump was the right candidate with the right message at the right time. And what he did was come to Michigan and talk to voters in a way that many of them had not heard since Ronald Reagan. And he was able to shift enough votes to flip it to the Republicans for the first time since '88.
Well, and we've heard, things like Donald Trump tapping into the Bill Clinton blue-collar voters, the Bill Clinton union members that Donald Trump was able to take advantage of. But what is it specifically about Donald Trump that has changed the way that people are considering these candidates now? Because it like you mentioned, wasn't until 2016 that it went to a Republican a presidential nominee, but what is it that he has done and continues to do that makes his base here in Michigan so eager and so willing to go out, keep that ground roots efforts afoot, and keep this thing within striking distance?
Well, his base that he developed in 2016 has never left him. His base supporters are incredibly loyal. And they love it when he takes on the press, for instance, and has this adversarial relationship with the media. They love it when he does what they would consider to be sort of speak truth to power, right? Sure. Kind of the stand up for the little guy. The America First agenda is pretty. Resonates with them, right? So I think that it's his approach as well as his message that not only keeps his base, but has expanded that base, for Republicans to voters, or I should say with voters who in 2016 maybe hadn't voted for a while or had never voted, right? Brought new people to the Republican Party. in places like Macomb County and in places in rural areas, sort of up north.
So what do you think these two candidates need to continue to do over this stretch run now? Because we're close, and this is still very much up for grabs. Donald Trump was just speaking to the Detroit Economic Club, and Kamala Harris is going to be in town a couple of times this week. So what do these two people still need to do you think?
Well, I think that the vast majority of people in Michigan and across the country have made up their mind about how they feel about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And I think that this election comes down to three things: turnout, and turnout. And whoever does a better job of getting their supporters to cast an absentee ballot, go to the polls early, or go to the polls on election day, whoever does a better job is going to win.
And what does it take for that to happen? What kind of messaging needs to be put out in order to get people excited to vote? Because look, I mean, the realities are, you look back at what happened with Joe Biden and getting out of the race, the support amongst Democrats it reached bottom, right? And then the fact that he stepped away, she got elevated, and the fact that she was coherent, I think, was enough for Democratic voters to come back. But still, the dichotomy is pretty apparent between these two. So how do you get everybody out to vote?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it means, or I should say the answer is different for different people. For some, it's just a simple reminder. Hey, remember, you got to go and vote. Others, it takes engagement with a particular issue. And you see Democrats doing this right now with the abortion issue. They are using that as a way to keep their base energized and to keep them engaged. For other voters, it's I don't want to overplay my hand here and say fear, but sort of striking fear in the hearts of others of hey, look, this is what's going to happen if the other side gets elected.
Mm. Well, it's an interesting look, and we're coming down the stretch here, and these candidates obviously are putting the full court press on, and it's going to be an interesting next couple of 20-plus days. Dave Dulio, always appreciate the time and insight, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep. 800-859-0957, 800-859-0WJR. I think when you break this down, right, and we'll do this coming up at 2:35, because I think that aside from just the personalities, aside from the policy, there's a distinct reason why Donald Trump hasn't lost his base. And I'll give you an example of it coming up. Because while I think Donald Trump leaves room for criticism in the things that he says, there are efforts underway, as Dave Dulio just mentioned, the adversarial approach that Donald Trump takes to the media. There are, I think, things that people see or hear or witness and go, that's not right. When you juxtapose that with the other side and the way people are treated, it's very different. It just is. And so I'll give you an example of that coming up. But this thing is coming down to the wire. And in many, many states, these polls are within the margin of error. I don't know. I mean, Brian, can you remember an election this close in your lifetime?
Not this close.
Not like this. Not like this. Maybe in some states, maybe in a couple of states where things get close, but not across the board. Not across the board are we seeing in all of these swing states, in maybe 5 or 6 of the 7 swing states, where they're within the margin of error. I mean, it's close. So we're coming down to it. 800-859-0957. We'll take a break. More next. It's JR Afternoon.